Hello guys, we're going to get straight into this. Going to be showing you myself installing an Ajax Hub 2 system where, yes, I hit a pipe. So let's get straight into it and do commentary with it as we go. I'll pause it and play it in times when I think it's worth it so you can give you a little bit more information. But let's begin. So there's my Ajax Hub 2 kit with all the bits of equipment and my rubbish box, which is absolutely vital because you want to keep cleaning up as you go. So I unpack here, and this is the Ajax Hub 2 control panel where I'm plugging in the power going into the back and plugging in the Ethernet port, which is going to go into the back of the router. Also, something important now is putting in the SIM. So you see it there. I just pop it out so you can see it, and then pop the SIM into one of the slots. I also have that on my own DIY security system, the Godfather, in case you don't want to have a professional install do it for you. But, you know, each to their own. I'm installing this Hub 2. Now it's time for me to get power to the system. Now, I'd already tested the electrics. I'd put in the plug-in unit and done my tests and things. But when the actual plug face is off, it's still worth going across it with your multimeter because I don't want to get zapped, and it would not be the first time. So now I'm just making a chase in the wall so I can put my cable through the box with a grommet on it and put it into the back of the fuse spur and then have my power. Now, when I'm doing an install like this, I just love getting the fuse spur done and dusted and out the way early. It just feels like as soon as the fuse spur is done, it's just downhill to the finish line on the install from that point. So it's really straightforward in order to fit a fuse spur. I can do a video specifically on that if you want me to. So essentially, you know, you'll take, say, a plug off, for example. You need to be competent, have a good understanding of electrics and, you know, actually really some qualifications as well. But you have your blue, which goes in the blue, which also sometimes, actually in this case, I was doing it blue went in with the blacks because it was on the old school wiring where red was the power. But so the brown would go with the red, the blue would go with the black, and the earth would go with the earth. But usually, if it's up to standard wiring, been done in the last like 20 years, you'll see the brown, you'll see the blue in the back of the plug, and you'll just match up the cable colours with them. So then I'm putting in the raw plugs now. Now my cable's in place, and I can just tighten that back box up now. And I'll tighten that up and I'll strip back the mains cable. So when the mains cable's stripped back, that goes into one side of the fuse spur, which would say in. So on the back of the fuse spur, it actually has the terminals saying live in, neutral in, and an earth. And you also have live out and live out and neutral out, which goes to the fuse spur. And I'm just going to pause it here because you would have just seen me on the video there. So if I just rewind that a little bit so I can show you what I do here. So I'm just tightening up the mains here. Now, when I get the back plate, so I've got the back plate and I'm marking that on the wall, but this is an important thing that you'll want to do when you're coming to do some form of install. And I've made this mistake before. So I put the back plate on the wall, but then I present the hub next to the back plate because the hub actually extends out a little bit further than the back plate. And sometimes if you mount the back plate and you haven't actually checked the hub fits, it can hit the fuse spur, and then you have to take the back plate off, move it across to give it some more room so then you can do it. So it's just worth bearing in mind. Just check on size and dimensions of everything before you actually start drilling and start fitting, and then you won't make the mistakes like I have made before in the past. So you can learn from my mistakes. So we're screwing up the back plate of the Ajax Hub 2 here and getting close to fitting it so it's already got its power. The great thing about this, especially for customers, is you don't have the power off for long. If you get this out of the way first, it's just minimal disturbance to it. So I'm just putting in the cable. I've snipped the plug off the actual cable that came with the Ajax because I'm putting it into a fuse spur, which if you're doing it to certain standards for an NSI approved company, you need to do it like that. You can't be plugging in a panel. It's great for DIY panels and things like that, but if you're doing it where you go into specific regulations, ideally it needs to have a fuse spur, which isn't actually 100% BS regulation, but it's very much advised, to put it that way. So now I'm putting in the fuse and going into the fuse spur and popping that in, dropped it, which I do a lot in general. Pop that in and the Ajax Hub will go green. You can see it there, and now we've got that bit all done and dusted. And then we get the Henry Hoover and tidy up after ourselves. We want to make sure as we go we can keep things nice and clean, especially when the customers are in the house when you're doing your work, because especially when you've been drilling and things like that. As long as you clean up as you go, and then they're going, oh wow, there's pretty much no mess here, this is great, and it's just a much better experience for them. So this is the keypad, which is a touchscreen keypad, again like I have for my own Godfather security system. I'll leave a link to that in the bio in case you want to have a look. But this is the backplate for the keypad that's going on now, so you'll see a few, and I see the way I'm using a box underneath where I'm drilling here. This is a really handy tip, because if you drill with a little box underneath, you catch most of the dust. You still have to go over it with a vacuum to make sure you get everything, but this just makes it less messy and saves you a job essentially. So I'm going to drill in now so I can get my plugs ready to put my plugs in, and then I can screw the keypad on. So get rid of any mess there, and with these I just cut off half of the raw plug because I didn't go in too deep with these, so just cut off half the raw plug, and then you can pop them in and they still work great, and you get a solid grip on the wall. It just means you don't have to drill too far if for any reason you don't want to, such as, you know, there is a radiator beneath me there. I don't want to potentially accidentally go into any pipes, which I might do a little bit later, but, you know, you just think about these things. Think about where you're drilling. If you have to drill, if you're not sticking things on, which is, say, common for a DIY system, you can still stick things on for Ajax, but when they're getting a professional company in, it's best to drill it on. So there we go, putting on the keypad, a thumbs up, that's all done and dusted. This is the speaker, so we put this in the entrance area. This will give you your entry and your exit tones, and it will also make a noise if the panic button is pressed in-app, or, you know, if the alarm is triggered in itself. So I like to go just above where the keypad is, to be honest, and just out the way, but quite high up with the speaker. So I'm just drilling holes for it now, getting the raw plugs out of the box that actually come with the speaker, and we're going to pop them into the hole there and just tap them in, and then we're going to screw the speaker into place. And it really is all downhill essentially from here, or at least it's supposed to be if you don't make a cock up like I did. One thing worth noting with the speaker, if you're going to be fitting one yourself, is as you're looking at the speaker there, you can see, right, it's got the tamper, which is on the left-hand side. That's the side, so as you're looking at it, you need to make sure that tamper, when it's mounted to the wall, is on the left-hand side. If you don't and you put it on the wrong side and you force this, it's really easy to just accidentally snap the tamper on those speakers. So just check you've got that tamper as you're looking at it on the left-hand side. Now we're going to the first detector, which is the front door contact. I did give the customer the option of drilling or sticking on this. Reason being, it's quite a new front door. Sometimes we'll stick devices if it's like a brand new front door, so we don't void any warranty, even though it doesn't actually give, you know, it doesn't damage the door, but they can come out and say, oh, you drilled the door, you can't, you know, we can't give you warranty on this door anymore. So we've got the one side of it, which is the actual unit that has the reed switch inside. That will ideally always go on the frame. Sometimes it has to go on the door, depends on the room you've got, but ideally you always want you put a magnet onto the frame. So that's what I'm doing here, drilling for the magnet so it's in line, and then as the door opens, it opens the reed switch inside the actual contact itself and will start the entry and exit tone, for example, or start an alarm. Maybe you've got this on a Windows. This is actually called an opening contact. When it senses an opening, such as a window or a door, it will start an entry tone or set an alarm, depending on what you've got it set to. So they're now in place, and just making sure they're lined up. It's all learnt onto the app because you scan it on. So this is one of the very few old sensors on the previous system that I'm ripping off now, and then that is going to go in the bin. You know, it's not needed anymore. And also you'll see me just running over with my hand here, and what I'm actually doing is there's a load of cobwebs around, so I'm just clearing all of them, because last thing I want is a false alarm. There we go, there's the detector. Now they are really resistant now, new sensors, to these kind of things like spiders and stuff, but still better to be safe than sorry. So I'm just marking out the holes for the back plate on here, one on the left and one on the right, and then I'm going to drill into the breeze spot that's there, put in the raw plugs and screw on the back plate, then learn on the motion sensor onto the system, and then I can pop that into place. Now on the right hand side, as you're looking at it, there is a tamper, which, you know, if you put a screw through there, means if someone tried to rip the device off the wall, it would trigger a tamper alarm. So always try and do that. It just gives it that extra layer of security. To this day, I have still never seen someone try to actually tamper with an alarm at someone's home. you know, in order so they can break in later. That's the point of it. That's why they have anti-tamper. I have seen it in commercial settings. I've seen someone in a pub setting where they ripped off a sensor that they knew wasn't tampered, and they ended up getting turned over that place that next night. Now I had to go to the wholesalers, which is just here, and they have their selection of stuff, and there's Ajax right there with the equipment they've got. Because I had to get some more shocks. Now, a little bit of an issue with them, but I'll go over that later. Next thing, most important point of the day is getting the lunch ready. And look what this drives me to, guys. Drinking in the middle of the day, drinking a shot. That's how stressful this can get. I'm only joking. That is actually olive oil. Apparently, Brian Johnson from online Blueprint thing tells me it's very healthy. So there's my lunch. So I have a tablespoon, basically a shot worth of olive oil every single day. The idea is I'm going to try and live forever. We're going to see how we get on. Anyway, this was my lunch that day, and it was actually beautiful. I'm on meal prep at the moment just because I'm trying to lose a bit of weight. So these are one of the shock sensors that are going onto the window. You can see up there as well in the right-hand corner that I've installed a motion sensor in this area. Now I'm attaching this shock sensor, and I'm realizing they've actually sold me a shock sensor that's not the superior line. The difference is the back plate. The back plate is only about about half as big on the back plate, and that's why I'm fiddling about with it now, because I've realized what's happened. And the thing is, when it's not a superior line shock sensor, it doesn't have a very good grip, and it falls a little bit. So when you put it onto the back plate and you slide it on, if you've got it like I've got there on sideways, the top part that hasn't got the brackets underneath falls a little bit, and it just looks a bit of a mess. So I'm just going through it now, and I soon realised I'm just not happy with it. I'm not happy with the finish of it. So I actually end up going back to the wholesalers and throwing them at them and saying, don't give me these again. Never again. I want the superior line. Now, I didn't throw anything. It was just, just a mix-up. Went back and they swapped them. They were great, and swapped them for superior line. Ended up costing me a few more quid, but it's just worth it for a nicer job for the customer. So I basically have made a decision at this point now, and it means I'll show you in a second as well, the back plate on the superior line is a lot longer, goes right the way across the device, and it just means it's not flimsy or anything. I would hate the idea of a customer seeing it and like knocking one that was more flimsy and saying, oh, I'm not sure that's on right. Just don't think it looks good. You may as well be a perfectionist, where you can do if you're if you're doing a security install. And honestly, I'm looking at it now, and I'm looking at it and thinking, this doesn't look right, it's falling. So anyway, I eventually give up on that, and you see now I've got the superior line because I've got the longer back plate. You see it there? So that's going to go in now, and when I tighten this up to the actual window, there's no movement in it, and it's much better. So if you're getting shock sensors from Ajax, get the superior line. It's just a better fit and more secure. Also with a screw in the bottom of it, it's much better. I'll tighten that up now, and when this goes on, it's so much nicer. There's no flimsiness of it, and there's got that screw in the bottom. Superior line all the way, guys. And then I'm putting the shock sensor onto one of the bifold doors. This property has motion detection and a lot of perimeter protection because there's a lot of glass and things, and they want to try and stop people before they get in by putting perimeter protection on. This is on shock sensors on doors and windows and opening contacts to make it so the moment someone tries to gain access to the property, then it will trigger the alarm. The reason for this is these guys were actually burgled around about 3 weeks ago, and they stole a load of bikes from them. So it was definitely a job where the people had been casing their joint, and they knew to go for them. Otherwise, how would they have known the bikes were in the back, essentially? So in some way, they've been watching them, which is not nice, but we put the security system in, and hopefully this means that it'll never happen again. There we go. Now, we're getting to the bit that you've all been waiting for, okay? This is a landing motion sensor, and I'm going to show you now. I'm unpacking it, and it's all going normal. And there's the back plate for it. There's the on and off button. Thought I'd show you the back of the sensor where you put the on and off button for it. Now I'm marking out the tamper, so in that side you make a hole through there so you can put the tamper screw in, and making one on the other side as well. And then I put it up to the wall, and I do a pilot test hole, which I always do for this exact reason, making sure I don't want any problems. So I go through my screwdriver first, and then I make a little hole with my drill, and then I'll make a longer one in order to put the raw plug in. Now, so I've got the thing underneath, you know, to make sure I'm catching any dust. And then where is it? There is it. Where is it? So here we go. This is to the moment now. So I'll pause it and I'll show you exactly what happens. So as soon as I feel something's different here, right, and let me try and pause this at the right point. Okay, I've got it. See on the end of the drill there, you can see some frays. That's metal. That's a pipe. I've hit the pipe there. Now, thankfully, I've only grazed it. The reason being is I've done this for so long. I know exactly how that drill should feel as it goes into the wall with what it's hitting. I know whether it's hitting brick. I know whether it's hitting wood. And in this case, I know when it's hitting metal simply by the feel of it. Everything's a bit different. It feels different through your hand. So, thankfully, I've only grazed the pipe, a tiny bit of metal off the pipe. It's caused no actual damage, and I haven't like flooded the entire property or blowing it up, hitting the gas or anything like that. So disaster averted, but very much a learning point here where you really need to be careful about when you're drilling. Because I had to look around, there was no reason for a pipe to be there, but you never know. And I was lucky really that it wasn't a plastic pipe. When it's a plastic pipe, right through it if it hasn't got a metal covering on, and it can really cause an issue. So thankfully, and I did do some checks after this as well to make sure I hadn't done any actual damage or anything like that. Thankfully, in this case, I got away with it, but it just shows how careful you need to be, especially when you're working in someone else's house, to make sure you don't cause any actual damage to anything in their property. You know, I have had it before when an apprentice has drilled and not realised, because he's been new, that he's hitting metal, and he's went right through the pipe, and it's just been pissing water, and the customer's there. Oh, it was in their kitchen, and it was a nightmare, and I had to act all cool walking over to it because I didn't want them to panic, and shut the water off, and I had to end up getting new pipe and taking the wall off, putting a new piece of pipe in, plastering it for them. They were actually great and weren't annoyed. It was just sometimes it's a risk you take when you're installing things, but as you get more experience with the job in any line of work, in any engineering, you just know if it's not right. And to be honest, if you're an engineer and you're watching this, you'll know exactly what I mean when you feel it and it's like, oh, that doesn't feel right. And that's exactly what happened. So thankfully, disaster averted, and I'm putting on the motion sensor now, and it's in place, and it gets the thumbs up. Thank God that it actually ended up not being too bad in the end. So now I'm going to whip my ladders off of the truck. This truck's actually a courtesy truck at the moment. I've got the same one, keeps breaking down. So I've had this now for the last 3 months. I'm clocking up so many miles in it, but they haven't been asking for it back at the moment anyway. So I'm using this. This is the old bell box that are ripping down, but I'm not putting the new bell box at the same place because it was on the side where it was easy for them to get a cable through, and that's just not what I'm looking for really. I don't think visually it was much better. We can put it on the front, so we agreed with the customer to put it into that area, the yellow, the white. Box basically section there. And the reason I've got down the ladders there is I've actually realized, oh, I haven't learnt the sounder onto the system, so I can't record putting it on, because then I'd need to put it on, take it off, go back, because I'm recording with my phone. So I need to learn it on with my phone and then go and mount it, which is what I'll show you here. So it's mounted. It looks quite smart in that little area. They're having a couple of sounders on this, one on the back as well. So you get the back plate of the sounder. It's got 2 holes in it. Drill through there and then put the raw plugs in there and tighten that up, and then when you go on with the Ajax sounder, it goes in and it slots into place. I don't love it the way it actually fits on, but it's solid when it's in place. It's just a bit fiddly because then underneath you've got a screw, which is quite difficult to get to, I think would be fair to say, with anyone who's actually fitted one of these. But it's a good system. It's a great system, to be fair. I'm nitpicking at it a little bit, really. It's not like some other ones I've given a go in the past that have just not worked. It's still been expensive, but the Ajax has been very reliable in the areas that we've put it into now. I have given Texacom one more go because the rep really was asking me to give it one more try. So I've installed a couple. In fairness, they've been good. Been reliable, but you know, I'm with Ajax now really, you know, for these installs, and obviously I recommend my own system, the Godfather security system, for DIY installs. So I can't really see myself going back to Texacom again the way we used to install, to be honest, which is a shame. But it's always good to have competitors in the industry, so hopefully Texcom are getting on top of their stuff now and making it more reliable. So now I'm putting my ladders back onto my truck, and we're coming up to the end of the install. So thankfully, disaster averted. We didn't actually end up doing any damage to the customer's house, but it's a really good lesson on how you should just do everything you can to try and avoid having any problems, and making sure you drill pilot holes and making sure you're paying attention when you're drilling. Overall, though, a successful install, a really happy customer, a good Ajax Hub install. Hopefully you've enjoyed coming along for the ride of it. And, you know, if you want to see me install a smart home with all sorts of leak protection and CCTV and all that kind of stuff, just click up there, and I'll put it on screen, and hopefully you jump onto that and you can enjoy that video too. Thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.